Hello, George Tilson here. It's nice to be back with you again, and I'm very happy to be here with my friend, Dr. Michael Ward, who is newly retired and looking a lot younger already.
Thank you.
And Mike presented a webcast about a year ago with Dr. Michael Waymeyer on self-determination and employment, and I really appreciate you being here, Mike. Our session today is on social capital, which is a concept that's been dissected, studied, and written about since about 1900, if not before. It's been covered in a wide range of disciplines, including economics, education, history, medicine, sociology, human rights, and politics. Social capital seems to have had a resurgence in the literature lately, especially as our society has undergone significant shifts demographically and culturally and politically. It's become a hot topic with regards to people with disabilities and others who are striving for full participation and increased opportunities in the broader community. So we thought it warranted its own VCU RRTC webcast. Before we dive into our session, it's useful to note that over the past 3 years, the VCU Center on Employment of People with Physical Disabilities has provided information, resources, and research on best practices for helping folks achieve their desired career and life outcomes. To date, the center has presented over 20 webcasts and conducted a number of studies that cover the waterfront on issues ranging from assistive technology and accommodations to job search strategies, self-determination and self-advocacy, to financial and benefits management, and ways to live what Chris Coleman calls an unconfined and full life. Check out the webcast Chris did with Nancy Brooks Lane in this series. All of this got Mike and me thinking about what it takes to implement these practices. How do we ensure that effective strategies are actually put into place for a person? And how do people with physical and sensory disabilities use these techniques or tools to overcome obstacles and achieve their aspirations?
In preparing our talk, we found a lot of crossover in many other things that have emerged in the field of disability research. Just to give you an idea, let's take a quick tour through these things: empowerment and autonomy, self-determination and self-advocacy, inclusion, natural supports, informed choice, person-centered planning approach, self-advocacy and collective advocacy, customized employment, quality of life, civil and human rights and personal responsibility, accommodation, access, and assistive technology.
The list goes on. All of these concepts are embedded in this notion of social capital. In fact, we find it impossible to read about and reflect on social capital without encountering these other topics. There are many definitions of social capital in the literature, but we'd like to start with a basic one that we've come up with. Social capital refers to all of the connections we have to other people in every aspect of our lives throughout our lifetime. Other words to describe those connections are relationships and networks. People who have a lot of social capital experience more opportunities, greater happiness, and achieve more of their desired outcomes than those who may have very little social capital. We had the opportunity to interact with a number of people with disabilities about what social capital means to them and how they've acquired it. A common theme was making themselves known to others, being the kind of person that others wanted to be around, and contributing to every relationship, whether friends, colleagues, neighbors, romantic partners, acquaintances, and other contacts in their communities. Neil Jacobson is a former senior vice president of Wells Fargo Bank in charge of their information technology. He says, and I quote, "My wife and I have been married for 33 years. We have a 29-year-old son. I've always been very active in the disability movement. I have cerebral palsy. I use a powered wheelchair. I have a significant speech impairment and I need 10 hours a day of personal assistance services to help me with my activities of daily living. I know firsthand the importance of social capital." At Wells Fargo, my area was a highly skilled technical area. We did information technology for the bank. Often when I attended meetings with people I didn't know, I observed their eyes grow wide and their body grow tense as they looked at me, not knowing what to make of this odd-looking guy in a wheelchair. I always took on the responsibility of making them feel at ease. I'd crack a joke about my New York accent or engage them in chit-chat. I knew that unless they felt comfortable with me, our work could not proceed. For people with physical disabilities who have speech that's difficult for others to understand, the challenge of building social capital is one that has to overcome in creative ways, whether through the use of assistive technology, augmentative devices, personal assistance, social media, and the internet, and like Neil, with a healthy dose of good humor. Ed Bartz is the managing editor for the online Capability magazine. He writes, "Being a person born with a severe physical disability, communication has always been the most significant of all the obstacles I've faced. Since I was a youngster, my intellectual ability has always been questioned due to my often unintelligible verbal communication. Thankfully, through technology, various communication devices, and lots of speech therapy, I'm now quite skilled at communicating my thoughts, and more importantly, my witty and sarcastic ways."
I agree with Ed and Neil. As a person with a speech impairment and a New York accent, I learned early on that I had to put myself understood, and I had to make other people understand me, whether they wanted to or not. They often had information that was critical to reaching my goals, and it was of the utmost importance that they communicate with me. This required my being assertive, determined, and persistent.
Again, that theme of self-determination is interwoven with social capital. Another theme is reciprocity, or put another way, relationships are a two-way street. You have to put something into every relationship you have.
The biggest single thing I have done to increase my social capital is probably to put myself out there. I volunteer and take on tasks that I know I can do, but perhaps professionally I haven't had the opportunity. I try to fill a role that fits me and that I can be most successful in doing, whether that be professionally or even with friends and neighbors. I want to invest myself in whatever project is happening somehow. I may not be able to build a deck or put up a fence when it comes to neighbors or family, but if I can prepare food or bring drinks, set up music, or do some small thing to help be a part of a project, I will.
Chris is a filmmaker who has his own business. He was featured in the webcast I facilitated called The Opportunity Game. When it comes to opportunities, Alexandra Dixon has devoted her life to being an active participant in many community causes. She says building social capital means you have to get out there, be there, show up. Here's a quote she wrote to me. Speaking of showing up and social capital, in college I did an internship. A few years later, I volunteered for a political campaign. And a few years after that, I attended an opening of a new women's shelter. Someone came up to me and asked, "Hey, did you work on so and so's political campaign? I remember you." She asked if I would serve on a commission. It happened to be the statewide Independent Living Council. Well, this changed the course of my life. Alexandra's quote is a great illustration of the fact that social capital is comprised of three different types of networks: bonding, bridging, and linking. These have been cited by a number of sources, including the University of Minnesota's Extension Center for Community Vitality and Michael Woolcock of the World Bank and Harvard University.
Bonding networks are characterized by the close ties that help people get by on a daily basis. They are primarily homogeneous connections with family, friends, and neighbors who share similar beliefs and life circumstances. These are people we know well and with whom we share things in common. You might say we have an affinity with these people.
Most of us are members of a bonding network, which provides us with a sense of belonging and solidarity, like I have with Mike. Those who lack a bonding network may be extremely isolated and vulnerable. Homeless or elderly people, and many of those with disabilities, can find themselves without such support. In some cases, there can be a downside to bonding networks. For example, some groups become so insular that they may reject the perspectives of or even exclude those they see as outsiders. An example of this in our field might include organizations that serve people with disabilities in segregated facilities or programs that don't see community-based competitive employment as an option. Another example might be a group of people with particular political views who are disinclined to even consider the ideas of those with differing political affiliations. In the most extreme cases of negative bonding networks, societies have to grapple with the phenomena of gangs and cults.
But for most of us, bonding networks are essential parts of our lives. In fact, as Judge Kellum tells us,
My biggest piece of advice for building your social capital is to start where you are. Start with people who are closest to you and expand from there. Ask them to introduce you to people they know, and so on.
A bridging network consists of connections with others who are outside one's bonding network, making it heterogeneous in nature. Typically, these are people we don't know well. The advantage of a bridging network is that it links us to external resources and gives us access to more opportunities than we might otherwise have. It's also an avenue for disseminating information. For example, a bridging network is very valuable to someone looking for job contacts, ideas, and leads, or wants to gain new experiences.
Before I started my own business, a statewide group I was volunteering with needed a new logo, website, and some video work done. I volunteered my time and energy to do those things, which led to an increased role in the group. That, in turn, led to more videos. The connections and time I put in there led directly to my first secured contract for video production for my business. One of the group's stakeholder agencies needed videos produced and knew of the videos that I had done for the group. I maintain a working relationship with them to this very day, and they make the bulk of my client work.
Here's what Neil Jacobson has to say about his own experience with linking networks at work. I'll read his quote. A good example of how a colleague helped me increase my social capital happened several years after I started working at the bank. I complained that at many of the bank's functions, everyone stood and chatted with each other. From my wheelchair, all I could see were butts, and no one could hear me above the din. My colleagues suggested that before each function, I contact people I wanted to meet and arrange times they could meet me in the hallway, sit down, and chat with me for a few minutes. Hey, it worked. I met many people that way, and it was fun.
Often we think of work relationships and social relationships as existing in two different worlds, but consider Alexander's point.
Until recently, I had never gotten a job via my social network. I knew my boss before becoming her employee because her husband is the head of a committee on which I sit as secretary. I also knew her son.
Alexander goes on to say that the lines between professional connections and personal ones can be very blurry. Mike, you were telling me a story about a high school kid who wanted a job in a warehouse but wasn't having much luck.
Well, I couldn't find them next door to this young man. His dad was on a community volunteer committee with the manager of one of those big box stores. The friend had spoken to the manager about what a good worker Joe was, and he was hired. What the difference between these two types of network? Well, as well been putting themselves binding social capital constitutes a kind of sociological super glue, whereas breeding social capital provides a sociological WD-40.
It's that collective value that comes from these social networks or groups
Exactly.
that make it possible for an individual to achieve things they couldn't on their own. The sociologist and physician, Dr. Nicholas Christakis, says these networks offer benefits not just for us as individuals within the network, but for the community as a whole. More concepts emerge from this: trust, reciprocity, altruism, and generosity. You know, something you've heard me say, Mike, is people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. And the same holds true for people we hang out with socially.
Finally, to make a big part of social capital has to do with how well you get along with other people.
Well, to quote Neil, social capital is the ability to be liked. It's by far the most important asset anyone has in both their professional and personal lives. All other assets and attributes can be acquired or compensated for if a person knows how to be liked, knows how to engage with people, and knows how to appear to be alive, engaging, excited about life. I know that all the technical stuff can be learned if the social capital is there. Conversely, without social capital, technical skills are often useless. Here's Alexandra again.
I think I have a lot of social capital because of who I am naturally. I'm naturally an extrovert. I love talking to people and hearing their stories. I'm also very involved in my community. I learned that when you show up, people ask you to do things. And when you do things, more people get to know you. It's sort of a snowball effect.
Social capital has been so very important to my success in life. After I received my bachelor's and master's degree, it was very important to have a solid network around me. These are professional and personal networks. Some of them cross over, but what's most important is having quality people in my life and being a quality person myself. You really have to be someone that others respect. That respect is like a magnet. It attracts people. Relationships are critical. It's not just who you know, but who knows me.
Neil has a unique and practical bit of advice. He says, when I first worked at Wells Fargo, my team members always went to a bar Friday afternoons. Well, I hate the taste of liquor. I quickly learned the importance of joining them at the bar. That was where many decisions were made. My drink, rum and coke, without the rum. I've often said that one of my biggest handicaps working for a bank was my dislike for wine and sports. Many company dinners were preceded by hours of wine tasting. Many company meetings were held right before sports events. I attended every party, dinner, and event that I could, and I enjoyed them too.
I like pushing and bonding, which primarily involve putting into action. A linking network provides an individual access to organizations and systems that help people obtain resources or create change. This can include foundations, nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and financial institutions.
Although these groups are very different from one another, their members find a mutually beneficial reason for working together. Let's consider transportation, for example. Many people with physical disabilities have challenges getting from point A to point B. Well, so do senior citizens, people who can't afford cars, communities that have limited or no public transportation. Linking networks allow like-minded people to tackle shared problems. Here's a quote from Alexandra. I think part of the trick is to be open to possibilities. My friend says, unless I can give a really good reason not to, I say yes to opportunities that come my way. I try to follow his philosophy. I think something else that's super important is to follow through when you say you're going to do something. That's how you build trust, and people trusting you is what builds social capital. Alexandra was also featured in the Opportunity Game webcast. She's a great model for how people can establish and use their linking networks by actively engaging in important community causes, public meetings, and political events. She believes that people tend to trust leaders in these organizations when the leaders themselves actively listen to them and follow through on promises. In linking networks, it's possible for people with differing levels of status and power to interact with people in leadership or positions of authority. An example of this could be a teenager who makes a case before a school board for a new policy allowing students with poor grades to participate in sports as a motivator for those students who do better in school. Something like that. Another example might be a person with a disability who talks to the administrator of a housing agency and advocates for more residential options, not only for others with disabilities, but those without disabilities who face difficulty securing affordable and safe housing. In their research, Hellowell and Putnam found evidence confirming that social capital is strongly linked to subjective well-being through many independent channels and in several different forms. Marriage and family, ties to friends and neighbors, workplace ties, civic engagement, both individually and collectively, trustworthiness and trust all appear independently and robustly related to happiness and life satisfaction. So, vibrant social networks are a vital part of a healthy community and individual well-being. Here's some food for thought. If you think of building economic capital, you're talking about monetary gain. The more money you have, the greater your economic capital. Something has to go into the bank. It's tangible. Is this the same idea for social capital? Several authors have argued that the word capital itself implies making a sacrifice. For example, one invests money today, thereby not spending it now, in order to have more money later. One goes to school now rather than playing in order to get a good job at a future date. In both examples, you're making a sacrifice of some sort.
However, second theorists believe that the opposite is true. For social today can grow exponentially and never deplete. We leave that up to the theorists, but it is an interesting idea.
It is. We do know that both economic and social capital can be studied because they can both be observed and measured. For example, we can ask the following research questions related to social capital. To what extent does an individual have entree or access to opportunities, let's say education, training, and employment? What kinds of help and support does she or he request and receive? Are they getting the information they need? What about resources? Can they get to the places they want to go? And can they live where and how they want to live? Another term we hear often is human capital, which refers to the assets of an individual. Let's say a person's intelligence, their knowledge, personality, the resources they have. Some analysts speak of the emergence of groups outside the mainstream of society, such as people with disabilities, who have little chance of being included because of the lack of human capital and the right sort of social capital. Again, more food for thought for most of us who want to expand our social capital or help others expand theirs. At the most fundamental level, social capital is a framework for thinking about the networks of relationships among people in our communities.
We came across literature that identified a correlation between the number of relationships and the connection people have with a number of beneficial outcomes. These include better health and well-being, greater access to diverse options and opportunities, expanded sense of hopefulness and optimism about the future, increased willingness to make tangible contributions to the community, and my favorite, stronger self-determination.
Well, Mike, here's something you've been discussing for a lot of years, self-determination. It's certainly a powerful concept for all people, but certainly for those with disabilities. You've said self-determined individuals have the power to make decisions and have choices. They have a large measure of control over their lives. They have access to resources and supports they need. I would say it follows that a person's ability to live a self-determined life is compromised if they lack social capital.
For most of us, social capital is initially transmitted to us at an early age by our parents and families. As with other forms of capital, take money for example, the amount of social capital a child inherits from their family can differ significantly from a tremendous amount to almost none. Social capital is greatly influenced by one's bonding network.
From that point on, people begin to acquire social capital by discovering their passions, by being recognized for and finding avenues for expressing those passions within a community. As we encounter others who will encourage, support, and guide us, our social capital expands. We begin to develop a sense of purpose and a positive view of the future. It's interesting to note, Mike, that this is the impetus behind the whole person-centered approach to helping people develop various life plans related to education and employment and independent living. So around the same time that Mike and I were putting together this presentation, I had the opportunity to work with an organization that was concerned about quality of life issues for people they served. The thought came to me that much of the literature I was reviewing on quality of life presented theories and concepts that dovetailed with those related to social capital.
In 2000, Robert Sherlock pointed out that researchers had identified more than 100 definitions of quality of life. These emerged from studies that answer the question, what determines the caliber of a person's life? In order to answer that question, researchers had to examine different life domains: environmental, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Right. They had to look at the events and circumstances of individuals' lives in order to portray a complete or holistic picture of each person they observed. They acknowledged that quality of life is both objective, how others perceive a person, and subjective, how that person perceives him or herself. How satisfied or happy are they with their lives? Several researchers came to the conclusion that we can't accurately study quality of life without accurately taking into account the individual's point of view about what's most important to them. And that point of view will change over time as a person goes through different life stages. This is true for all of us. Not only that, but quality of life depends on what part of your life you're looking at. One may be physically okay, but emotionally struggling, or have a great place to live, but no friends, or well educated, but unable to find a job. No wonder there's over 100 definitions of quality of life.
And his work Dr. Sherlock categorized these into 8 areas. 1. Emotionally well-being. 2. Relationships. 3. Material well-being. 4. Personal development. 5. Physical well-being. 6. Self-determination. 7. Social inclusion. And 8. Rights.
He concluded that people perceive they have a good quality of life when they have a couple of things. What they need to meet their basic needs, choices and opportunities to pursue their personal goals across multiple life domains, connections to their community, meaningful relationships where they are valued by others, control and autonomy in their own lives, opportunities for personal growth, a sense of purpose.
The Center for Health Promotion of the University of Toronto conducted a study in 1997 and made some unique observations. They defined quality of life as the degree to which a person enjoys the important possibilities of his or her life. They identified 3 aspects of quality of life: being, belonging, and becoming. Being is the characteristics of the individual. Belonging aspect of how people fit with other people and places. Becoming aspect of daily activities that promote personal growth, development, and adaptation to life.
It seems to us that all of these characteristics of quality of life mirror those of social capital. They also describe the benefits of social capital. The National Organization on Disability has reported that many people with disabilities have a lower quality of life than those without disabilities. By the very nature of their disabilities, these individuals tend to have limited opportunities to form the kinds of relationships and connections that build social capital. In fact, Mike, I read somewhere that the average person has around 150 connections, but if they have a disability, this number drops to 25. We went back to our experts, our friends who live with physical disabilities, to get some practical advice on how to raise the number of connections people can make.
Look, you have to put real effort into it. Real effort to build a network and create the valuable relationships needed to impact yourself personally and professionally.
Always ask people if they can refer you to others. Introduce yourself to other people. And you can do the same for them. It takes work, hard work, to build a network. It's more than gathering a collection of names. It's building mutually beneficial relationships. It's about the results that come out of those relationships that matter.
Sometimes social capital is what gets you the help you need.
A couple of years ago, we had a snowstorm that dumped 23 inches on us. I was stuck in the house for 5 days because my street had not been plowed. At the end of 5 days, my patience wore out, and I called every politician I knew, from my U.S. senators and congressmen to my state assembly folks to my board of supervisor people. You better believe I was plowed out in an hour and a half.
Neil said social capital is critically important in my home life. Working with attendants is always easier and much more pleasant when social capital exists. Both parties are responsible to create a good rapport with each other and to enjoy each other's company.
For me, having access to technology and social media has enhanced my social capital.
Fred Hobbs is Director of Public Relations for Imagine in Colorado. He's a big proponent of helping people with a wide range of disabilities to gain safe access to social media. One of the things that he says is that we can no longer ignore the incredible opportunities for community engagement that social media can bring and ways that they can increase social capital. Fred brings up a great point. Social media allows for a person with a disability to decide when, how, and if they want to disclose their disability. It allows them to find others who share common interests in sports, music, and any of the thousands of areas where their disability is essentially irrelevant. For those grappling with specific issues, social media provides mechanisms for joining into small, select groups to share stories and ideas or information about resources in a secure environment. And let's not forget the importance of social media in identifying job contacts, ideas, and leads, or for the entrepreneur, marketing and selling products and services. Alexandra uses social media to rally support for various community causes.
I spend a lot of time on Facebook introducing people who have common interests. Oh, you're interested in social justice issues? Well, let me introduce you to so-and-so. It's a great way to mobilize people and expand your social capital at the same time. For example, there was an incident where several churches in our community were burned, so a friend and I did a fundraiser. In the space of 6 weeks or so, we pulled together an event that had 300 people there, and we raised $6,000.
Maybe this is too obvious, but I also think it's important to tell people how much you appreciate the assistance they give you.
I attend frequent events to get my name out there and for people to get to know my abilities. I want to contribute my time, talent, and resources to my community. It's important to use every way you can think of to communicate with others, whether it's sending them handwritten notes, email, social media. Be sure to thank people for their time and for including you in various events. I also evaluate my social capital on a frequent basis with hopes of filling in the gaps.
We also heard loud and clear from Chris how just doing good things for others is a way of showing appreciation and for contributing to the group, which in turn builds social capital. He told us that in his video production business, most of his clients are through connections he's made through various volunteer activities or through referrals. He finds that living independently comes with some household tasks that are beyond his ability. Friends, family, and neighbors will often lend a hand on a project he needs help completing, and he in turn will cook dinner as a thank you. Without his network, household repairs would either go undone or put a financial strain on his life.
In my quote unquote lost years, when I wasn't sure of what I was going to do for a career path or about finishing school, a friend made it a point to get me involved in volunteering and in young professional groups. Um, Back then, networking and building relationships seemed so foreign, but now it seems much easier when I know where I'm going and what I'm looking for. My main focus now is to reach out to the community and to build others' social capital.
Neil had an interesting perspective on teamwork that relates to social capital. He said, when I interview candidates for the bank or to be attendants or whatever, I focus on their personality. Can we get along? Can my team work with them 8+ hours a day? Are they excited about being there? Are they excited about being alive? Are they engaged in the conversation? I know that all the technical stuff can be learned if the social capital is there. Conversely, without social capital, technical skills are often useless.
For me, it is so important to know people from all kinds of backgrounds. People that typically might not be in your immediate circle.
I think that part of the reason I have such a wide social network is that I know people from all kinds of different walks of life. I have theater folks, I know healthcare folks, I know teacher folks, I know the head of very important organizations here in Virginia. I know people working on immigration justice issues, reproductive justice issues, environmental issues. I have ministers not only from the UU tradition, but also from the Episcopal tradition and UCC and Baptist. I often say, if I don't know someone who can directly solve this issue, maybe I know somebody who knows somebody.
Alexandra also encourages us to be mindful of the fact that some of us, because of our backgrounds, have more advantages than others do, and this certainly influences social capital.
So I'm thinking about intersecting identities and how that may limit the amount of social capital one is able to access. For example, being a person of color and disabled might mean that access to social capital is different than it is for me, a white Latina. When it comes to education, because social capital is about how we resource our schools, and those who don't have a lot of social capital may not be able to get the resources they need to have good schools, this further perpetuates systemic inequality.
From my perspective, this is why it's really important for those of us who have advantages and opportunities to contribute to others who don't.
I absolutely agree with that. In summary, the topic of social capital is wide in scope. Our presentation just skimmed the surface, but hopefully in a way that hit the key points and gave you a lot of food for thought and piqued your interest enough to dive into your own search for more information and ideas. Mike and I concur with Al Condalusi, who believes that social capital is available to all of us and makes our lives better. Perhaps unlike financial capital, social capital expands the more it's shared. Economists can probably argue with us on that, but come to think of it, Both economic and social capital rely on putting something in, investing capital, and hopefully getting a return on that investment.
From our look into the literature and discussion with several self-advocates, we conclude that people with high levels of social capital have
Resources, ability to leverage those resources, autonomy, influence, and control. You mentioned earlier natural supports, a desire and ability to advocate for others, emotional satisfaction in their lifestyle, options and choices, and ability to ask for and make referrals and recommendations. They have a motivation and means to attend events. They have the willingness to contribute their time, talents, and energy and other resources to the community. They can evaluate where the holes are in their network and strive to fill the holes. They have access to social media and connections to ongoing education and training. They have the ability to get to places they want to get to. And they have the ability to communicate with and without accommodations or AT, to express what they want and need, obtain information, and identify problems and solutions, and manage conflicts.
they ought to have the desire to bring people together for common impact. A strong sense of self-advocacy, a belief in the power of collective action, an understanding of their desire and a willingness to ask for specific help, a desire to reciprocate and help others in any way they can, a spirit of adventure, the willingness to put themselves out there, strategic alliances, a personality that draws people to them, and access to information and opportunities for skill building.
Because of this, the way my mind works, Mike, I summarize the components of social capital by,
Scary.
scary indeed, by using the words that start with the capital C. Let's try this out here. Community, communication, connection, contacts, commitment, collective, contribution, choice, control, create, change, capacity, circle, coordination, confident. For fun, here they are in a sentence. Higher levels of social capital lead to a better quality of life for a community and its individual members. A collective commitment to coordinate and use communication strategies in a way that connects people to various communities so they can build their network or circle of contacts to access opportunities, to choose what they want in their lives, what they want their lives to look like, exercise control over their destinies, and contribute their talents in a way that changes perceptions and creates a greater capacity for those communities to cultivate people who feel competent, confident, and comfortable. 3 words that describe self-determination. Thanks for joining us today. And
After you see this webcast, let us know your thoughts about social capital. Thank you again.
thanks, Mike.
And Josh.